So let's start. A very good morning to all. On behalf of Marwadi University, a very warm welcome to all of you for yet another interesting session of Samvad. Charles W. Eliot once said, "Books are the quietest and most constant of friends. They are the most accessible and wisest of counselors." Before we start our session and introduce the speakers, I would like to invite our Honorable Dean, Dr. 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙠𝙖𝙧 of Faculty of Computer Applications, to address the audience. So please.
Very good morning, viewers of this Facebook Live, and hearty welcome, Shri N. Venkataraman. We are very much honored. We are very much privileged to keep you in this Samvad session. Actually, Samvad session is an initiative of our communication department under the guidance of Shri Naresh Jadeja, our registrar. And they have started this Samvad initiative just a couple of years ago. They have hosted more than 20 programs by calling eminent personalities all around. And just to quote with a few books which we have already taken up for the Samvad, and we had a session on the book The Forest of Enchantments. And another dignitary has taken up a book on Our Moon Has Blood Clots. And we had one more session on by Shashi Tharoor, Why I Am a Hindu. So like that, the idea behind this Samvad is to inculcate book reading habit amongst the youth and also the faculty fraternity. See what happens, I already mentioned, like we faculty, after taking up a particular designation, after moving up, we stop the reading habit. But as Kinjal said in the beginning, like every good book is a good companion. In that phase, the many problems which we are not able to address by ourselves, we find solutions in many books available. Maybe that solution would be for another context, but would be applicable to ours as well. So that is the idea behind it. And in this series, today we have invited Sri N. Venkataraman, popularly known as NV, for his book talk. And over to Kinjal for a nice introduction by our NV sir.
Thank you, sir. I would like to introduce our speaker today, Mr. N. Venkataraman, popularly known as NV, is a senior advocate at Honorable Supreme Court of India, who has completed 31 years of professional practice in the fields of indirect taxes, direct taxes, international taxations, constitutional law, and regulatory matters of various organizations, including TRI. He has completed the law in the year of 1989 from Madurai Kamaraj University. Besides the Honorable Supreme Court, Mr. NV is also appearing before 23 high courts spread over various states of India. Mr. NV also serves as visiting faculty at the School of Law, Shastra University, which is a deemed university of Tamil Nadu. Apart from being a prominent senior advocate at the Honorable Supreme Court of India, he also serves as Additional Solicitor General at the Supreme Court of India. A warm welcome to you, sir. The floor is yours.
So before I hand over the floor to Sri Venkataraman, I would like to mention one thing. The book sir has taken up today is We, the People, and which is authored by Mr. Palkiwala. Thank you, Kinjal, for your nice introduction of Mr. NV. Over to Mr. NV. We are eagerly waiting to listen to your address, sir. Please go ahead.
माला सुधा कुंभ विबोध मुद्रा विद्याविराजत् करवारिजाताम् अपार कारुण्य सुधाम्बुराशिं श्री शारदाम्बां प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम्. Namaste to all of you. Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you, Kinjal, and thanks also to your registrar for actually giving me an opportunity to read We the People one more time in my life. First of all, I must If possible, by the end of the speech, if you can tell me who has thought of this book, I would like to compliment that person, that gentleman or the lady. It's an amazing choice because it's a book which will hold the destiny of this nation and its people for at least a few centuries. All of us know who Naniji was and what he lived for. This book was released on his 64th birthday, 16th January 1984. He was born on 16th January 1920 and expired in 2002. In his 82 long, blemishless life, this book was one of the major contributions of his many, many multifaceted contributions. On his 64th birthday, I once again thank the person who chose this book, and I'm happy I could read this book in 1984 and a few times then and there. But after 36 years, I had the great opportunity of reading it one more time. To relive, it's something after Swami Vivekananda, if somebody can spark, can light, can ignite a fire in a human heart, after Swami Vivekananda, it is Nani Palkiwala. I would request you to study the people if you have not started already and keep going on and on and on to know all his works. See, what should a book convey to you as a youth? It should convey to you the master plan of this universe. It should convey to you what your nation is all about and where do you stand at this point of moment in your life. It should give you the hope, the aspiration, and also talk about people who are inspired and created history for your nation. And then it should give you the individuality to chart out your own path in life, but having the guidance from those inspiring people and the nation to which you are born and the commitment you must have as an individual. This book seeks to convey all the three in equal measure and a combination which is very rare to find. He starts with the failures of the nation and says, in public domain, one should understand as a young man or a young girl, in public domain, you will get information in plural ways, especially in the technology media. You will be overdosed with information and you will not be in a position even to sift and understand what is right and what is wrong. And therefore, it is essential that you read a book like We the People, because nobody can doubt the integrity and the ability of Naniji, and he was a true nationalist. He loved India, and he loved Indians, and he loved the world and the human race in total. So, if such a man is going to say a few things, is it not worth knowing it? Is the question. He starts in the first chapter. These are all a collection of his writings and his speeches delivered at various points of time, and which has a direct impact with the nation and its people, and therefore titled as We the People. So he brings down what this great nation has failed on four broad accounts in this first article, which is an article written by him in the Illustrated Weekly a few years before 1984. He says the biggest challenges India has, something which he predicted 36 years back, which is true even today or even after some years. A, failure to maintain law and order. We have too many laws and too little control. We have too many procedures and too little effect. It keeps adding to this list. So, law and order, for a nation to stand up on its own, law and order is one of the indispensable requirements. To failure to bring the unbounded economic potential of our country into fruition. I'll be dwelling it a little later also. 3. Failure to make human investments in education, family, nutrition, and public health. And he says, what is paramount? What should be, as youngsters, you should have this vision. There's a very important principle he conveys. He says, what is paramount for a nation is the gross national happiness and not the gross national product. GDP growing, but correspondingly happiness is coming down, is not going to make the nation happy or its people happy. So you should think of gross national happiness. And the last one, moral leadership. This is something so true to replicate, not only in governance or administration in any form. You're all going to be future leaders, business leaders, deans, professors, politicians, lawyers, doctors, will all be something in life, management consultants. This is the time. Naniji's books should be read exactly at both Swami Vivekananda's complete works of Swami Vivekananda and Naniji's works. This is the age to read. If you don't read it now and read it at 50 years, you can't relive your days back. You would have missed something very costly. So he says the fourth failure which can happen to any human being is moral leadership. Ethics and morality is the foundation of a good human personality. That's the Indian view. Don't worry about Western views. We have our own prototypes, and it has survived not just years or centuries, it has survived yugas. Therefore, moral leadership. See, what do you mean by that? He explains. As you grow in life, you will be attached with responsibilities, you will be attached with dispensation, you will be attached with accountability. There is something which you alone can do. Many may find it out, and many may not find it out. It's all your own responsibility. You are what you are. And that, he says, ought to be morally and ethically perfect. So this is something which you should take to you as an important lesson. Failure by you will accrete ultimately as a failure by the nation. Now, when it comes to democracy, this is how he defines it. If you must have democracy, but you must not have mediocrity. You should have meritocracy. Very difficult. Both cannot gel well. But he says the gap between meritocracy and mediocrity and democracy will decide the movement of democracy at a particular point of time in a nation's life. And in public life and in public offices, we should shun, at least in 2020, start thinking, ignorance, incompetence, and dishonesty should not occupy or fill public domains, public administration, and public life if you want to have a good democracy. And third, even though the doctrine of democracy works on the greatest number, it's a number game always. But he says, political ideologies and economic principles and the soundness of those ideologies is often inverse proportion to the popular support or command of the people. See, this is a very important carry home message for all of you. You have to bring a sound ideology which has only minority acceptance and still succeed and push it as a democratic value for the general good of all its people. This is an art. That leadership lies only there. Somebody can think of a good idea, but bringing a good idea will never be accepted by all. So bringing that good idea, which is unacceptable by all, as acceptable by the majority, the trick of democracy, the skill of democracy lies only there, says Naniji. And the fourth, very important for a democracy to survive, is one should know the difference between, he says it's not a difference, he says we all talk about financial integrity and honesty. But even more important is intellectual integrity and intellectual honesty. And what do you mean by that? He says two things. It would be a treason if a good, noble idea, thought, or vision is not brought into public domain. See the way he thinks. You have to work for the people. You earn whatever you want to earn, name, pride, status, power, all that is fine. But ultimately, are you connected to the people? And if you have got a good, noble thought or a vision, if it is not available for public circulation and it's only available for your private consumption, then he says it's intellectual dishonesty. And the nation becomes poorer because you are not ready to value add to the nation. And therefore, it is dishonesty and it's a disservice to your own motherland. And he says also that between the voices that are heard in the world, which is so rampant in today's social media, because anybody can write anything. Freedom of thought, freedom of expression you demand, and all of you overlook the fact that Constitution obligates you to not only express your freedom of thought and expression freely, but it is also subject to several restrictions. We don't want restrictions. So therefore he says, he has said this 36 years back, you will find unimplementable, undeserving, anti-national views and ideologies percolating faster, percolating with great speed than ideologies and recommendations which will do good to the nation, because the carriers of the former are more in number and they are vociferous and their voices are somehow getting heard. This is something when globalization is yet to come into India. It came only in 1991. Palkiwala has predicted it 36 years before. That this is what we are trying to, because this is one downside of democracy. Problem is, if you take a good decision which satisfies all, then a few, the cross-section say, we are left out. So what are you doing? Then you try to pacify and take a decision to please them. Then the majority says, why are we left out and what for are we to sacrifice this? So the majoritarian view, the minoritarian view is something which we are caught with. It could be on the fabric of religion, fabric of communal feelings, fabric on caste, fabric on ever so many things. It is very easy to bring distinctions amongst human race. And therefore he says, what is true nationalism is overlooking this and say, are you able to connect? See, our ideas may be different. We may not agree with the same ideas. It's not possible. But our aims and ideals can be one. There's a difference between, what is the difference between aims and ideals and your idea? Aims and ideals are static. Goodness of the nation, wellness of the nation, greatness of the nation, pride of the nation. Those are all ideals and aims. Now, reaching that path, ideas may be plural. But if you're going to destabilize this ideal of goodness and wellness to the nation, then your ideas should not be allowed to percolate. An idea which will harm the nation, even if it is allowed to be expressed on the grounds of freedom of speech and expression, if something is going to harm our country, he says, should not be allowed. And Palkiwala was remained a constitutional express from day one. So he can't be wrong. So this is very important in terms of democracy. And therefore he says, very importantly, three things about democracy he finally concludes in one of his speeches. A democracy without discipline is a democracy without any future. An undisciplined democracy dims the future of that nation's democratic value. 2, undisciplined unionism as against nationalism is as dangerous as undisciplined nationalism. Or you can say capitalism. He contrasted with trade unionism and capitalism. I put it as unionism and nationalism because that is the current current conflict that we see every day, everywhere. And an undisciplined demagogy teachers, because it's an institute, it's an university, is as dangerous as undisciplined student power. So the common current in all the three for a healthy democracy is discipline. Lack of discipline leads, whether in your personal life or in your family life or as part of your nation's ideology, if you're not disciplined, then you're not going to do good to yourself, to your family, or to your nation or to the society. There is a huge contrast between discipline and indiscipline. And he says it starts, what is the starting point for that? You have to take in life the biggest of men and women, the biographies of the greatest human beings in this universal kingdom have shown to us, you want success or you want sacrifice. That's what Nani says, makes you. The more you try to sacrifice, you get disciplined. And the more you discipline, you will see success in life. On the contrary, if you attempt at a success which does not stem out of sacrifice, which does not stem out of discipline, you may still be successful, but it's like you can simply be blown by the wind any day. This is the contrasting difference. Both end up, converge only in success. But the path is something very, very important. Mind to sacrifice and mind to be disciplined. A disciplined mind and a work ethics with sacrifice leads to better success and greater happiness to an individual, and therefore larger good for the nation. And he finally says, after knowing all these in democracies, people should not run away from public offices, public responsibilities, even including politics. You have to stay. And he says three things towards that. We must not desert the ship merely because we cannot control the winds. Will we stop shipping? Will we stop sailing? Because we have no control over the winds? No. We'll still go. 2, it is better to try something and fail rather than trying to do something which will give us little or easy success. Trying bigger things is important. And he says the gestation period is too long and lengthy, and the promises that you make to deliver will make you so painful. But ultimately, a day will come for you to realize that you have worked for a larger cause and greater good in serving this nation in whatever capacity he can. When you say serving the nation, you need not have to go and contest in an MP election alone and win. Every contribution, with looking care of a parent, taking care of a dog, taking care of a family, taking care of a society, following the rules of democracy and the national spirit and our ethos and ethics will take you there, is what he keeps saying. Now, the time. I have another 20 minutes. Between truth and falsehood. See how Naniji describes. See his conviction. Like Mahatma Gandhi, Naniji believed in truth. And he stood for truth all throughout his life. You may all be wondering, because the presumption of any lawyer, a presumption about any lawyer is lawyers lie. That's the presumption. Every time, every lawyer has to rebut that presumption to show to people, no, he's not one who belongs to that category. Naniji stood for truth, defended truth, and was ready to sacrifice anything that came his way if he had to only establish truth. And therefore, he says, as a lawyer, as a man in public life, he has always maintained probity, which all of you know. The whole universe knows about that fact. And he says that there's a large difference between truth and falsehood. Namely, truth will finally triumph. But the damage falsehood can cause in the interregnum is quite enormous. And therefore, truth will reveal only when it is destined to get revealed. He believes in that. But he says you have to still work towards it. So that the long innings of falsehood, to whatever extent possible, should be sharpened. So he says two things. Truth will prevail finally. But it will prevail only finally. Till such time, the domain will be only occupied by falsehood, and it will create a huge damage. And therefore, if you're going to be part of that falsehood, to escape the immediate impacts of delayed truths, you are only furthering and lengthening the innings of falsehood. On the contrary, if all of us try to decide that what best we can do in establishing and bringing it on the path of truth, he says truth will triumph one day, and you would have in the process shortened the innings and life of falsehood. It's impossible to separate them out, to say that always it will only be truth. No. Most of the time it is filled only with falsehood. World democracy works only that way. But we have to take a call where we should be. That's an individual decision. When you are in employment, when you are an entrepreneur, when you are a teacher, when you are a consultant, when you are an advisor, this ethics is important for you. It's a matter of conviction we must have. And then he says, our constitution and our nation is a land of opportunities. But failed democracy will convert a land of opportunities into a land of opportunism. There's a huge difference. Opportunity is something which you pursue. Opportunism is something which you desperately try to get. Remember, as young students, life should be pursued, because nature works in that path. It's an important message. See the glory of everybody's life. Life should be pursued. Life should not be caught. Getting is different from pursuing. Getting will hide your eyes. will mask your thoughts, will dim your visions, and decay you because you want fast and immediate results. Each one's life takes its own pace. You have to understand and you have to find out what sort of a person you are and in what rhythm you are placed and what is your natural strike rate. Don't do anything to harm that. It's going to lead you to only lack of peace and lack of happiness, says Naniji. Now, when it comes to economic truth in a democratic nation, he says, you cannot divide more than what you produce. Simple logic. If you see this year's budget, 2021, one of the important announcements this government made was uprooting poverty or alleviation of poverty is not by distribution. It is by growing. It is by developing. Because you cannot divide more than what you produce. To say that I should take it from you and then redistribute, and you are making two mistakes. The spirit of the man who makes it is lost. And the man who is a beneficiary without effort, you make him lazy guy. And therefore you should not do it. Yeah, it should be an important philosophy of every nation. How to integrate the faith, the inspiration, the charge, the resources, and the capabilities of its people, along with the bestowed resources of the nation. This is planning. I'm going to talk about both Aurobindo and Mahatma Gandhi, which Naniji loved the most. And he was saying, why did Mahatma Gandhi had this chakra as his greatest symbol? Because he always visualized machine will take over man. And it will happen, but not at the cost of idling a man or a woman. If it's going to, see, we used to watch TV with one channel. Now we have 1,000 channels. Now we used to go and switch on the TV. Now we have a remote. Now to find out where the remote is, there is one more device. How does it make it? Does it not make us more and more lazy and indolent? So this is a philosophy which you must have in life as an individual, so that you contribute to the nation ultimately. You should use mechanization as effectively as possible, but ensure human resources don't go idle. It's our dharma. It's a big nation with large number of people. What you sell here, you may have to do 25 times the effort because you have 25 European nations put together to sell it. The population of them will be still less than what our population is. It's a big nation. Therefore, how you integrate? This is something as an individual. If you want a machine to substitute a servant maid, if you can afford a servant maid, then don't substitute it with a machine. Let her earn her life. Just start from there. Wherever you can. Because this is Gandhi's philosophy. Not our, which is Nani speaks. It's not our philosophy, it's Gandhiji's philosophy. And he can't be wrong. And he writes about, within this 45 minutes, and there's a huge book of about 300 400 pages, and it's a delight to read. All of you should read it. But I'm just covering it in that 45 minutes given to me with two more characters, Aurobindo and Mahatma Gandhi. Two powerful people who have influenced his life. And when he writes about Aurobindo and says these are his philosophies, it opens up the vision that somebody could think 100 years ago what India is going to be in its future. And he says, this is what Aurobindo has said, which I am now writing. As years progress, free India might well play a large role in global development. It's coming true. World Bank and IMF is saying that in spite of COVID, we will go at 15% and in realistic pace at 11.5%. And in the next 2 years, India is going to be the fastest growing economy. IMF is stable with that report. And in spite of COVID, the kind of investments India has got in the last 10 months, no other nation could claim that parade. Because of democracy, because of the people, because of our values. In spite of the fact that so many people plunder so many things. We read every day in and day out. But that's minuscule India. Even though it may have a larger impact, as falsehood has. Because our fundamentals are strong. So he has visualized that, says this book. And see what Aurobindo has conceived a century before. Dual citizenship or multilateral citizenship. Interchange or fusion of various cultures. Nationalism without militancy. And international outlook, not at the cost of self-preservation. Like machine and ideal work. Now what is happening? Globalization went left, right and center and it started to eat smaller nations, smaller capital economies. Now what is happening? From globalization, we are slowly moving back to re-globalization. And each country wants to assert the power and strength of its people as first preference holders. Even in a nation like US. So, unless you have an international outlook, not at the cost of your self-preserved values. I've always said, remember, because you're all young children, globalization is like going in a BMW car. However great and good that car may be, you cannot bring that car and keep it in the middle of your house. It has to be only in the garage. So use globalization for whatever you need to connect with the world. But once you step into your house, take that coat of globalization out of your body and mind and follow the rudimentary ethical Indian hereditary principles, values and traditions. As youngsters, I plead before you, only then you can run long distance and really do contribution. Now, he says, what Aurobindo says, he says, what is very important for a common man like us? One is stability, another is progress. And when does stability come? Stability comes only when there is unity and cooperative action. And who can instill this stability? Only governance can help this. And what should be the governance? Who should be in governance? People who are selfless, non-egoistic, scrupulously honest, and capable. And he says, this is what Aurobindo used to say, life swings between two ends, the pendulum. Importance to success, career and money, vis-a-vis growth, happiness and development. I think I should wind up with 1 minute, one sentence, and I should wind up with that. See, this is something Naniji has captured for all of us. I will read only this. This is when President Carter came to India. He read the charter of 7 deadly sins, which he had prepared before the Gandhi Samadhi in New Delhi. A tribute which Jimmy Carter had wrote on the death of one of an eminent senator of the US House, Herbert Humphrey. He said, if at all I can read these 7 deadly sins, I can read it only in the Samadhi of Gandhiji. And look at this. I want to leave these 7 principles as the foundational bolts for each one of you, for you to carry a very, very rich legacy of Indian heritage, Indian thought, and merge it as the most powerful global objective to aim and achieve the best. These are the 7. 1. Commerce without ethics is a deadly sin. Pleasure without conscience, deadly sin. 3. Politics without principle. 4. Knowledge without character. 5. Science without humanity. 6. Wealth without work. And finally, worship without sacrifice. If we can stay away from these 7 deadly sins, you will be one of the most promising Indian, and you will do so much good to our nation. And therefore, I thank Sridhar and Kajal and your registrar and all the people, and especially I would like to know who recommended this book again. And please start reading the complete works of Swami Vivekananda and all the books written by Naniji for you to become well equipped, self-disciplined, ethical, honest, and above all, to remain a true Indian. Namaste.
So, you asked twice, sir. The book was suggested by Dr. Sunil Sagar. He is the head of the Department of Communications Department. And there is no wonder that he has selected this book, but I wonder he has selected the correct person for the book. I think be a very, very leading practitioner in this law profession. Who else could be other than you who can talk very nicely about this book, which frequently touches upon the democracy? So you are the right person. You justified your work. And let us have some couple of questions. Kinjal, do you have any questions in your mind? You can ask now.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful review, and it provided a great insight about the book and the author. And yes, we have got some couple of questions in our comment box from our viewers, and I'm also having questions for you. So to start with, I'll ask a question, sir. What impact does the content of this book had on you when you first time read it? So that I was wondering.
No, it's a very good question. Whoever has asked. In fact, I heard Naniji for the first and the last time only once in 1980 in Madurai when he delivered a budget speech. That's the only time he did it in Madurai. So he sowed the first seeds of aspiration for me to become a lawyer. And in 1984, I was in the first year of my law, 83, 84. And when I landed on this book, it gave me the conviction that lawyers need not be liars. You can be a very, very successful lawyer and still be an ethical human being after reading this book. This is exactly the impression it conveyed to me as I read it in 1984. And I've asked, when I read it now, I've asked my son to read it now, to say that this is what happened to me and this is what it should happen to you. And all of you are my children, whoever has watched it or who is going to watch it. Please read this book. It will inspire you.
So your son is also a lawyer, sir?
Yes, he's practicing along with me.
So can you share some details about your family? Can you share some details about your family?
Oh, yeah. In fact, family of 4, all of us are lawyers. Me and my wife were both schoolmates and then college mates in law. And we married. But after she delivered 2 children, she took a decision that law is a very demanding profession. So you should practice and I'll support you. I'll take care of the children. So it's a call. It's a very, very bold call she took in life. But the 3 beneficiaries are myself and my 2 children. myself the biggest beneficiary. I owe a lot to my wife for whatever I am today in this profession, and as a human being, more importantly. So all of them are. My daughter is a lawyer, and of course she's again a mother recently, and my son is a lawyer with. He's just joined me 1 year back.
Excellent. Any more questions, Kinjan?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And one more question we had from our Honorable Registrar, sir. So I would be reading it for you. He says that the author is a great person, and can you tell us how he could have developed his fundamental thoughts about democracy as presented in the book? Do you see his role as a lawyer or policymaker influencing it, or was it his brought up? Was it his brought up and early days?
I think Naresh Jadeja should be a great person to have put the question so nicely. Couched, he has asked me to explain something which will take 7 days. Such a good question. Such a good question. But I'll put it briefly. I think whoever is listening or will listen should know it. See, he was a voracious reader from his childhood. Number one, he was an extraordinary human being, voracious reader, and somehow discipline and ethics was part of his gene. And when a life is grounded on discipline and ethics, in spite of being a Parsi, he has always followed the Indian tradition. See, that is something which he has claimed as a pride in his all his lectures, because that is one community which has integrated with the Indian mainstream so well, and the contributions they have made for this country is enormous. So he's justified in claiming it as a matter of pride. So he had the biggest advantage of faith and belief in our values. You read all his life, he has not compromised on our Indian traditions, Indian values, sitting in US. See, he was an ambassador. You won't believe this is a reported incident. He was an ambassador for 2 years. When Jimmy Carter's mother, Jimmy Carter was the president then, mother wanted an Indian rubber chapel. She found it very convenient. Somebody brought her a pair. You know what Naniji did? He took a paper and pencil. See the simplicity of the man. Asked her to stand on the paper and he drew her leg and said, I will order a slipper and it will reach you in 1 week's time. The whole party was stunned. An American ambassador, Indian ambassador in US is doing this. This is the kind of a man. And therefore, and he believed in democracy. He did not believe in socialistic principles. He believed in true capitalism. When I say true capitalism, it's not globalization. Ethical, right capitalism. And he was saying India should always take the path as a democratic nation into the path of capitalism. That's why after 1991, he was giving budget speech every year. But after 95, he did not give. Because after 91 to 95, when globalization economy opened, he said, there's no need for us to push it anymore. Because India has now gone into the right path. This is his graph, Naresh. Thanks for the question.
So, thank you, sir. We have got one more question from our faculty, Gautam Hathiwala, sir. He asks, dear sir, in present day India, there are clearly many fissures in the democratic setup, possibly because of lack of aspiration and proper educational setup or scholarship among the youth. This is true even in our US or other developed European nations. In spite of better education setup, in this situation, do you think, sir, that our education setup is not connected to its original roots, and because we are more inclined to replicate the Western education setup, which we as nation are not ready to do?
See, thanks, Gautam, for this question again. We can't afford to replicate. In fact, you should be one person in the new educational policy panel. The way you put the question. See, this is an occasion. After all, India is drafting the new educational policy now. So institutions like universities like yours should go ahead and say, what is important, what we are missing is, see, whatever is Indian heritage and traditions and Indian value space, it is actually universal value space. Mahabharata and Ramayana, the two epics, every story has so much logic in it. For example, I just cite one. If you talk about Shakuni and Duryodhana as fellows who are very ferocious, fellows who are very crooked, fellows who only destroyed, a modern mind will not take it. What's wrong here? He has his own way. This is how you will see. But the moral of Mahabharata is Shakuni represents cunningness and crookedness, and Duryodhana represents arrogance and egoism. And if all the four converge into one place and act, it will result in mass destruction. The Mahabharata war is an example of it. If you tell this to a modern mind, it will understand. Every epic, every story in our value system is ingrained on that. Now, this applies for the entire human race. Why do we say and give it a color that this belongs to a particular religion? So, what is important today? You are absolutely right. Is we should have, whether it has part of the educational stream or outside the educational stream, we should have a standardized syllabus starting from age 2 to age 18, saying that this is the inheritance of India, the richness of India, and fill in that syllabus all our traditional values. So every child starts growing from age 2 at age 18. That's the formative age. As it reads its own educational syllabus, should be made to write, sit exam, some credit should be there. Then, unless we have dumped, when Western Europe and London and other countries are allowing people to chant Bhagavad Gita, it is a common text. It's not a text for a particular human being or a particular religion. So this is a very bold step which we have to take in the interest of our next generation. So, if you are going to take it, at least educationists like you, 100 of you should gather selflessly. Please do it as a service, Gautam. Draft it. Sit with people, experts. Bring a common syllabus. Put it in a common portal. Take 5 years, doesn't matter. But we must have a syllabus for the age group of 2 to 18 in India, which is applicable, which can be used by every child, irrespective of caste, color, race, sex. Then what you aspire will happen one day or the other.
So thank you, sir. Thank you for answering our questions. And there's one more question from our faculty, Dr. 𝙑𝙖𝙑𝙖𝙧𝙖 So his question is, ethical values and culture of India are indeed awesome. We can have grant reading and discussion among youth, which I believe is little low. How can we enhance it?
It's again, I think your faculties are superb here. That's all of you. Each one has put very responsible and with passion. Namaste to all of you. I've always respected teachers because you are the first gurus a child can see. And it molds only through you. So each one of you can be an inspiring force for thousands of people that who will come across in your life, which you come across in your life and they come across over a period of 3 decades as a teacher. So pranams to all of you. See, what is, can I just have the question again? 1 minute.
Yeah, sure, sir. So he says that...
I'm able to read it. Yes. Okay. See, yes. See, what is important, Brijesh, is how well each teacher is equipped about our Indian heritage. I speak in schools regularly. I've been requesting teachers. You don't have to equip everything. Please equip yourself with Ramayana and Mahabharata. And unless you equip in books like We the People, unless you by the kind of inspiration Swami Vivekananda can impact, can create in a human mind, only people who read his works will know it. So, teachers are the carriers. So, all of you have a responsibility to equip yourselves well with our Indian heritage system. Once you have done it, as you conduct your classes for 40 minutes or 35 minutes, or spend 3 or 4 minutes with a thought. Leave a thought. And whenever you find time, it's a passion, it's a matter of passion. See, keep seeding ideas. When see what this 40 minutes, what I shared are only seeds. You have to read the book. But see how potent each seed is. We can speak about one seed for one day. Each seed can be spoken for one day. That's the potency it has. So, drop the seeds into the minds of young people and ensure they don't hate anybody. It's a commitment every teacher should have in this country. Preach your children. Hatred is something you will not get God's help if you're going to hate somebody in life. So, love is the most powerful emotions which we should impart to our children. Selflessness. So, take these things, discuss, and convey its importance through 1 or 2 stories. It'll go a long way. It's all in your hands. Each one of you, see, what can each one of you do? See, when I took the position of an ASG, a retired judge said, you must know, Venkatraman, you are just a screwdriver in a big Boeing. A screwdriver can only do that little in a Boeing. I understand. Each one of us can contribute very little in this whole speck, a speck in the whole universe. But let's contribute that. As Palkiwala said, good idea, it is intellectual dishonesty if good ideas don't percolate. So try and attempt it. Whatever little reach you reach. If you are able to transform 10 children in your life, you have sown 10 huge investments. Please do it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful insights and answering our questions. Now I would like to invite Dr. R. Sridharan for the thanks speech.
So thank you very much, Mr. NV, and you made us realize the importance of the book, and we will definitely go for it. Unless we go for it, it will be difficult to shape up the new India, because the matter, whatever has been dealt with in this book, is so relevant, and every Indian citizen should read it, 100%. And thank you very much for sparing your Sunday time for participating in Samvad. And the session was so good, so interesting. You also answered to all the questions by them. So on behalf of the management of the university, Shri Ketanbhai Marwadi, our president, Shri Jitubai Marwadi, our vice president, Shri Jit Marwadi, our trustee, and also our provost, Dr. Y.P. Costa, our registrar, Shri Naresh Jadeja, my heartfelt thanks I submit it to you. Thank you very much, sir. Let us see you another interesting session with Marwadi University, either online or offline.
Namaste to all the teachers, and thank you once again. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you. Thank you, King.
Thank you.